Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cloud Wars Live. We're digging into the digital revolution, trying to make sense of what's going on here, keep up with the fast-paced changes. And our newest monthly digital all-star, who will be with us each month to talk about things going on across this crazy business, is Bridget Courneya, who's the editor online for Dynamic Communities Inc. Bridget, welcome back to Cloud Wars Live. This is your second appearance, and again, it's great to have you.
Oh, thanks, Bob. It's a pleasure to be here. We're just coming off of a holiday weekend and diving into some new projects and new exciting things down the pipeline. So happy to be joining you once again.
Bridget, thanks. And I know it's just a few weeks ago, you and I were partners in crime, helping to sort of moderate and offer some perspective on the first industry cloud battleground. There was a joint venture between Cloud Wars Media and Dynamic Communities. What did you think of that? And what stuck in your head about that event?
Oh man, it was a big event for us, one of our largest events, and also featured some different vendors that we haven't covered before in our platform. And as acceleration economy media is off and running and growing faster than ever, we were so happy to team up with you, Bob, and to host that industry cloud battleground. We had a number of vendors with us. Like I said, I have my cheat sheet list here: IBM, Workday, Salesforce, Google Cloud, SAP, Oracle, and ServiceNow. And it was really interesting being able to talk through a similar lens from that customer viewpoint. We equipped each of those vendors with 5 questions, and they all took their own spin on it. Some of them used a whiteboard like Salesforce, which I found pretty darn funny and got some good laughs out of. And others used customer testimonies on camera. And I really love this approach, as a lot of the folks coming to this event were customers, and they have those same questions of how to pick between all these emerging vendors and what is the right cloud solution for them. And I think that across the board, all the vendors did a fantastic job of putting together their testimony, their story in a unique way across every single vendor. I think that was my biggest takeaway, is the creativity that each one of them had into telling their own story. A lot of them used real life stories, data, and so much more. So it is available on demand if anyone missed it and wants to check it out. But that's my overview. But Bob, yes, you were in the passenger seat with me for this event and helping through it all. So did you have any big takeaways from that?
Yeah, Bridget, very much, I think along the lines of what you said, it was just this sort of whole phenomenon of the industry cloud thing has come together so quickly and so almost universally. Like every one of these 10 huge companies, just sort of pivoted, and all of a sudden they're racing in this direction, because I think, the general understanding here is that while the cloud's been helpful in a lot of ways for what businesses really need as we sort of rush into the digital economy, there's going to be even need for greater set of skills, capabilities, and the technology underlying this, I think, is going to be, the difference maker here. But Bridget, life isn't always fair. So we do the industry cloud battleground in mid to late June. And then at the end of June, what does Microsoft do but come in and sort of turns the whole business upside down with the acquisition of AT&T's 5G mobile network. So that is forcing some changes in the industry cloud top 10, Microsoft jumping up from number 6 to number 4. So it keeps our lives certainly interesting, and I hope we can continue to collaborate on some stuff and help keep for our audiences and for the buyers, people trying to, in the business world, keep up with these crazy changes, and every day more and more of this. And what are the big tech companies doing then to try to help them move forward here? So it's a fascinating time.
And you mentioned something around 5G. I mean, that brings up a whole topic of connectivity and how some of those cloud vendors are starting to compete. And we call this our optimal approach, and we've been tossing this around internally a lot of, we're hearing this a lot. There's many more companies are shifting their strategies to use that connectivity approach, because I mean, how do you get connected to those cloud services without connectivity? It's a chicken before the egg situation. And we've been talking around that a whole lot, so I feel like we've hit something on a nail on the head there, Bob.
Yeah, Bridget, and 5G is going to have an impact on, every business, seems like every person, every type of work we do, the engagement we do, the personal lives. You think about that, what can happen in the world of medicine, healthcare, education, travel, entertainment, just those things of commerce, and being able to see stuff, in real time in different sorts of ways. But you make a great point there. Like, all this stuff is fine. It's nice to think about it, but it's really not going to happen unless the cloud providers who are driving a lot of these new services can move at speeds and with a precision and clarity unlike anything anybody's ever seen. Pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that's just it, is the more direct that some of these organizations have with their strategy, and they're being really clear with that, I think they are going to move up to that top of the list and compete higher. So it'll be interesting to see what others do to respond to that situation, or just to solidify their own goals. I think there can be a bit of that dichotomy between just jumping in and trying to differentiate between your competitors, but then also doing what's right for you as a company, as a leader. So with Microsoft doing that with AT&T, I feel like they really stood their ground on where they're trying to go, and not a competitive move.
Yeah, Bridget, and we'll see, right? That on the one hand, we're seeing those the boundaries between industries that were hard and fast, very solid, rigid for 100, 150, 200 years in some cases. But those industries are also starting to come down as businesses sort of move sideways, following the money, following the market demand from consumers or from businesses and so forth. I think it is fascinating. And the speed at which all of this is happening is, again, as we've said, sort of unlike what anybody's ever seen before. So you folks over at Dynamic Communities have come up with a whole new sort of approach and a strategy for this. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so our strategy is the acceleration economy. We've pivoted that way as Dynamic Communities has evolved, but we've also seen that more companies are trying to be strategic with how they're moving themselves in order to be competitive, but then also to meet those customer expectations. There's this drive to be having quality and speed from the customer's point of view. And so there's this big question: how do companies measure up to those expectations when we're moving faster and stronger? And what are businesses supposed to do? Well, the acceleration economy media site that all of these programs are now taking place. We also just launched our very first or an inaugural acceleration economy journal site, or journal issue. These are all talking about what's taking place in our current market, how these, what business leaders should be doing, how they should be responding, what things should they be watching out for, but also giving them a voice in that conversation. So the journal is just one entity of this, and one example, and one that we're pretty proud of, and we're able to get off the ground very quickly. And this is a monthly occurrence covering different topics all around what we're seeing in the acceleration economy. And this is across industries. So I think our next issue is all around healthcare. So we're understanding what's going on in the healthcare stack in relation to this fast pace. So I'll be happy to share some links if folks want to download. That is free to check out. But very excited for some of the writers that are participating in regular columns. giving their points of view. Wayne Sadin, who was a shout out to him, who is one of our participants in the Industry Cloud Battleground, is also appearing in our regular journal there. So yeah, a lot of movement for sure.
It is, Bridget. What a crazy time here. And, I think that name, the acceleration economy, right? And somebody, I could say, well, what does that mean? How are things speeding up? But every company I talk to, not in the tech industry, not the tech vendors, but businesses outside of there, that's the number one thing on their agenda is how can I move at the speed of the world around me, right? How do I get to do this? And technology is a part of it. I think you've also got org structures in some way, right? You can buy all the technology in the world, and if you have a 20th century org structure, you're just not going to be able to move at that accelerated pace that's required. And then also, along with sort of the hard-edged, highly objective things around technology, there's culture, right? Do you have a culture that embraces this new notion of it? And is everybody focused on the world outside to meet the emerging needs and expectations, as you've described, Bridget, of the customers, as opposed to, just sort of falling back on those old habits of, endless internal meetings that, well, who knows what goes on in those internal meetings, but I think everybody's always happy to get out of them. And we often don't remember what was discussed in them. And then we can get back to the real world of what's going on outside our company's walls.
Yeah, but you bring up a good point here, which is strategy doesn't always mean external strategy. It also means internal strategy too.
I want to come back to that in a second, but first, just a quick word from our sponsor, BMC. BMC wants to know, is your business on its A game? That's when systems are intelligent by learning from markets, where automation is paramount yet effortless, and when technology and people work as one in an enterprise. The A game is your business at its absolute best. BMC calls this the autonomous digital enterprise. Find out more at bmc.com/agame.
What does your organizational structure look like? How are they playing together? How are they working together? I think upskilling and training, especially as technology is moving so fast, I think internally we also need to respond with that as well. And it poses a lot of questions for C-suite, for organizational leaders as a whole, and peers of how can we help each other get to that point of excelling at what we're doing, excelling at what we do for our company. So I think that's change management, organizational structure, taking a look at how team dynamics are working. Those are some areas that I personally really enjoy because it's kind of the weeds a bit, and it's a little nitty gritty, and I kind of like that strategy. But yes, to your point, there's a lot of dynamics there.
Yeah, so we need to excel as we accelerate. Bridget, one of the things that comes up with that is you're describing, some of those internal dynamics. And I think one of the other is where this acceleration economy theme that you folks at Dynamic Communities are really pursuing is so interesting. Is right. Everybody talks about whatever size business you're, whatever industry you're in, whatever part of the world somebody's in. There's always, you hear about this, the war for talent, and just this incredible demand for people who are willing to look at the world in different ways, see different things, and every sort of company is out, trying to hire these folks. Now, in the past, it always seemed to me, right, the traditional model was, I'm looking for a job. I go and try to arrange interviews with companies, see if they'll let me come in and talk to them, maybe get on their radar, maybe give them a chance. I think that thing has been flipped now, and you get these, top candidates, and not even, I'm just saying the top, but maybe most candidates these days are looking at it and saying, no, I'm the individual. I am the rare asset here, and I'm going to be the one that does the interviewing, and these companies can come in and it's somewhat bid for my services. So as that switches, or if that's true that switches, or it's not my hallucination that it's switching, then those individuals are what's the first impression they get of a company. And I think if they go in and they get to understand a little bit about a company, and they say like, ah, okay, they sort of do things the old way. They're sort of more of a reactor instead of a leader. Yeah, I don't think so. And they get crossed off the list. So this notions of do you have an acceleration culture? Do you have an acceleration mindset to go along with the growth mindset? If you don't have those, how in the world are you going to expect to compete either for the revenue and the attention and the loyalty of your customers, or on the other side of that, the talent that's going to be the lifeblood of companies these days?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my initial response here, my background is not in technology. My background's actually psychology and social work. And I love what you're saying here about how the people, and it's a people thing. It's people. It's less about the technology. And I worked with youth for about 4 years, and we helped train those high schoolers, not train them, but help them achieve their goals professionally, and how to do that. And I would say, from my perspective of coaching young people, and then now being in more of an adult environment, if you will, it's interesting, because now it's less about I'm going to be a doctor, and it's less about the job description that you're searching to achieve, and more about the type of work that you want to do, and the skills that you can bring as your unique human. And I think back to some of those times of coaching young people in my office, and they would, be anxious about, oh, I want to fit this job. Well, the reality is that future job might not exist even 5 years after you're done with college. And so how do you build those skill sets is some of those big questions of how can you be adaptable? How can young people especially be adaptable? And it's much less about fitting a mold, because here's what's interesting too. I just read a study recently about even doctors. Their roles are changing. They now have AI to help them with surgeries, and so that some of that, even the finite skill sets that they're doing on patients, or the research that they're doing, or things like that, their day-to-day is changed. So I'm going on a tangent here, Bob, but I think that forward thinking, it means a bit more of that human thinking, human optimized. There's also a podcast that I enjoy quite often, Decoder, and there's a book that I read, Future Proof, and they interviewed someone that on Decoder. Anyhow, he talks about the future thinking model, and there's those in law might not have that same law path as they traditionally did, because their day-to-day jobs of input or data management, things like that, are changing. So anyhow, my response there.
I like that, future proof, right? Because every organization now says, how do we future proof ourselves? And often they mean in terms of technology, but I think if you do that on the technology side, which is great, but you don't do it on that human side with your talent, with your culture, with your organization, that's not going to be a happy ending. And Bridget, may I go a little bit technical on you, please?
Sure.
All right. So you see the structure I've formed with my hands here, the space in between is a triangle. Right. Mm-hmm. I think that triangle represents a traditional org structure, very hierarchical. These people can only talk to these people, and so on like that. And it fit a purpose at some time. Those times are gone. And if you take as what the current world outside is forcing companies to go from this, like take a big anvil, drop it on top of that organizational structure, the triangle, suddenly it gets flattened out like that. And you don't have those hierarchical natures. And as that implosion happens and the triangle gets flattened, the jobs, all those constituent parts change, right? And instead of being somebody who comes in and I've got this narrow focus, and Wayne Sadin has talked about this. I know a little bit about what the next step in the process is in the company, or the one just behind me, but 2 layers out, I don't have any clue. And I think a lot of that's going to start to change because that was all driven by an internal view. And now we get this external, let's get more people thinking about our customers and what we need to do and how we engage with them and get customers involved in every facet of the internal operations where they want to be involved. It's just a completely different mindset. So I love your point there about young people today, their aspirations more about saying, here's what I would like to be able to do, rather than saying, I'm going to be an accountant, I'm going to be a doctor, I'll be an engineer, I'm going to be a phys ed teacher, whatever it might be. Instead, I think the world is being reconfigured some. And there's going to be more opportunities for somebody to say, this is what I love to do. This is what makes my heart beat faster. Where is the place for then to me to go and plug in and contribute as much as possible there?
Right, because you can always learn new skills. But if your goals are to be in nonprofit sector and doing something like that, or as a doctor or things like that, your goal to make your heartbeat faster and change the world might be just that. It's just you have to learn different skills along the way.
Yeah, and Bridget, one other thing, and I don't think we talked about this in your first appearance here on Cloud Wars Live, but I just think it's so silly these days. You see in some big, smart companies, but they will refer to they'll refer to HR as a back office operation. And I know whenever I hear that, I say to people, really, you think so? And well, aren't people your most important asset? Oh yes, our people are our most important asset. But this is somehow, what does back office mean? Well, it's not something that faces customers. Oh, so, okay. So your employees in the talent in your organization, well, some of them do. And I just sort of push that a little bit with folks. And I say, well, tell me about the parts of your company who don't touch customers. Who is that? No, I just, the list these days with these new ways that companies have to reconfigure themselves to connect with the world and their customers in different ways. I mean, is it design? No. Customers involved in design. Is it manufacturing? No. It's got to be custom manufacturing. All of sales, service, after, so on like that, product development, everything. So I don't know if I'm babbling too much more than usual, but I think this notion of that the change you're driving at, from the acceleration economy to how we look at talent, to how people make decisions, to how you weave these customers in here. It's a fantastic idea for dynamic communities to be on this notion of helping business leaders be able to understand what you have to do in the acceleration economy, so that you are not that sort of flattened piece of roadkill on the highway there.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring up HR about being a back office job, and I think we're going away from that, because even more so, I think HR is needing to get involved with who those choices are, what the people dynamics are, and that they are serving the customers, and having that lens of who are we selecting talent to bring into the organization. Are they a good fit for our customers? Are they going to help us achieve those customer goals that we have, or strategic goals? I think the HR really needs to be in touch with where the organization is going, and what the perception is from customers of the organization, because then other than it is just a back office job, and you're kind of in a corner and you're not really helping strategically with how your organization is moving.
Yeah, Bridget, I'm just sort of baffled by that, but I think the best companies are coming around in the tech industry, right, which is so remarkable in some ways. But you look at it, I would like to know who the person is who came up with this category for HR applications of HCM, human capital management. I mean, could you, if we'd spend a couple hours, could we come up with a more sort of cold and distant, and in some ways sort of dehumanizing of human capital management?
They're very polarizing. The words are very they're very polarizing from each other. I mean, you can't really put human management together and feel that that's a warm environment. It definitely has a tone to it. And then you put capital in there, and that just goes towards bureaucracy a little bit. And
Yeah,
it's an interesting little phrase there.
I thought it was sort of these, these sort of automaton like thinking, like over here we have our ERP thing, which manages our, what would they be, our non-human capital things, or finance capital and our asset. It's just an odd construct. But again, in the acceleration economy, I think a lot of those old ways of looking at things, and in some ways, Bridget, I think it's language, and people say, it's just a term, it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter, right? I think something we've all learned over the last, handful of years is language matters a lot. How we articulate the value of what we do, how we express our vision about what our company's objectives and our missions are and where we're headed in the future. So just to say this thing of, human capital management, it just puzzles me. So again, I think maybe one of the things that you folks over at the acceleration economy can do is help to awaken this notion that you're moving faster than ever before. The tolerance for error or imprecision or even unintended awkwardness is going to, if you're moving faster than you ever have before, you can't tolerate those things. You've got to have every part of your operation really on the mark.
Well, and I think over here we do think content and tone and language is very important. I mean, we're evolving as a company ourselves, and we're noticing that more and more that there are a lot of stories out there that have yet to be told. There's lots of many point of views that we can have a space for, and we can help each other. A lot of that power does lie in what you say and how you say it. And I think my biggest mission as a young leader, I guess, is lead with empathy and lead with human awareness and kindness, and do that with how you speak and your actions. And I think we try to evoke that in our content approach, by being inclusive of different points of view. Our CEO has a way of encouraging that as well on some of his shows, and he likes just tell me how it is. Tell me how it is. Tell me the good, the bad, the ugly, because the truth is, if you don't iron out some of the bad and the ugly, you can't find the way to the good. So anyway, going a bit philosophical there, but I do think it's important because when you're bogged down with all the technical things, being human is a kind of special.
It's
just a little.
Yes, Bridget, and about that. So I think you've offered a pretty compelling view about what acceleration economy media is all about. Could you share with everybody where people could find more of your great stuff that you and your colleagues?
Oh, there's all sorts of ways to engage with content at the Acceleration Economy media site. You can find us at accelerationeconomy.com. We have a number of podcast shows that we produce, one every week called The Wrap, and maybe someday, Bob, I'll talk a little bit more about some of the fun that we have on that show. That's with our CEO, John Seifert, and then our senior analyst, our bearded analyst, as he likes to be called, Aaron Back, and then myself. So 3 of us sit down and chat about what news has popped up this week, what should our viewers know about, but then we have some fun along the way too. So that's one way to engage with us. We also have Back at It podcast, which is one of Aaron Back's, our analyst shows. Great insights there. And then our Acceleration Economy Journal. You can check that out. So yes, lots of ways to engage with us. And then of course, one of our biggest events that we're gearing up for is Summit North America, which is kind of our legacy of dynamic communities. And we've been running this event for over 10 years. And it's a fantastic way to network with the Microsoft ecosystem. So it's one of the largest events for independent gathering of the Microsoft ecosystem. And we're really excited to be bringing the community back together and, bringing up some awesome content from the community picked by the community. It's a great time. So that will be in October. So lots of things to do, to engage, to learn more about us.
Bridget, that sounded like it's going to be live.
It is going to be live. Yes.
Oh,
We're thrilled. Yes. So the week of October 12th is that whole week, just, save the day, block it out. We'll be in Houston and thrilled to be back with the community again.
fantastic. Fantastic. Well, Bridget, thank you so much for sharing your ideas. We covered a lot of ground here. It went by very quickly, and you've just got a great way of looking at the world and bringing a unique perspective to some important issues. So thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure. And to all of you, thanks for being with us here at Cloud Wars Live. Hope your summer's off to a terrific start. Enjoy it because, well, I hate to say it, but we're in early July already. But there's still 2 great months left. We'll have lots of fun. Look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, everyone.